Joining me now from Capitol Hill, we have Kentucky Senator, this is very appropriate, and Republican presidential candidate Rand Paul. Senator, you just heard that news. What's your reaction to this? I know that you've come out in support of Kim Davis, but with this news, what's your take?
Well, I think it's absurd to put someone in jail for exercising their religious liberty. If you want to convince people that same-sex marriage is something that's acceptable, I would say try to persuade people. But, if we're going to use the federal government and we're going to get involved in every state, locality, what's going to happen? It's going to harden people's resolve on this issue. There'll be no open-mindedness on this. And I think it's a real mistake to be doing this. I think what's going to happen as a result of this is states and locality are just going to opt out of the marriage business completely. Her heartfelt religious conviction is that this isn't kind of marriage that she approves of. My understanding is that she will file a contract. If two adults have a contract, she'll file it. She just doesn't want to have a signature, her signature on it, showing her approval. I see no reason why there couldn't be a compromise where we couldn't have a notary of the republic, a notary of the public, certify the contract, and she simply files it. My understanding is she will do that she doesn't want to give her imprimatur to a type of marriage that she objects to. And this is really the problem when, from on high, from the federal level, we decide to get involved with a situation that has always, throughout the history of our country, been a local issue.
What do you think about Carly Fiorina's take on this? She has said, like you, that she respects Miss Davis's beliefs, her religious beliefs, but she also says she's a government employee and she should be executing the will of the government, and if she doesn't want to do that, then she should get a new job.
Well, I think one thing we haven't debated enough is what actually is the law. Is the law that every county clerk in Kentucky has to sign a marriage certificate? Is a notary of the public, is that sufficient? Is the clerk's job to execute and to file contracts, or is it to sign their approval? I think there's a lot of different ways around this that don't lead to conflict, that lead to more time when people can try to persuade others of their opinion on what marriage should be. But I think this is a real mistake. And even those on the other side of the issue, those who want to support a new definition for marriage, I think it sets their movement back because it's seen as that the federal government's going to come in with bully force and here even with police power and incarcerate people who disagree or who still believe in the traditional notion of marriage. So I think this is a huge mistake, and it's a step back even for those who do want to redefine marriage.
I want to talk to you about something that you said this week about heroin addiction. Here's what you said.
We have a lot of problems, and people always come up to me and say, we got heroin problems and all these other problems. You know what? If you work all day long, you don't have time to do heroin.
All right, well, that joke received by the crowd there, but this morning on CNN's New Day, your opponent, New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, said it was insulting, and he said that it's not facing the reality that addiction is a disease. What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, the problem with short clips is it didn't carry the whole discussion, and I discussed at least 10 times in New Hampshire this weekend that I do believe we should treat the addiction, and we shouldn't really treat it as an incarceration problem. I'm not for locking up drug addicts. I am for rehabilitation. I'm also a lead co-sponsor of a bill with Senator Markey that would allow doctors who treat drug addicts to see more patients. Currently, there's a bizarre federal law that limits how many people who are addicted can be seen by one doctor. My bill would expand doctors' ability to treat addiction, but also include nurse practitioners and others who are certified in drug treatment. So, no, you pick out a snippet of me trying to be funny and you don't listen, or the inclination is that, well, this is really what my position is on drug addiction. But if you listen to more of the speech, you'll find that my position is I think we should save money on incarceration and actually spend it on drug rehabilitation.
All right, and Senator, as you know, this pledge, the loyalty pledge, this is all the buzz today in politics with your field. You have called Donald Trump a fake conservative. You said this week that if Trump wins the nomination, the GOP would suffer its biggest defeat since Barry Goldwater lost to Lyndon Johnson in 1964. Have you signed the loyalty pledge? And if Donald Trump were to be the nominee, would you support him?
I'll support whoever the nominee is, and I will sign the pledge. I signed a pledge when I ran for Senate because, frankly, you need all of the Republicans to come together. I do think Donald Trump would be a disaster for the country and a disaster for our party, and I think we'd suffer the worst defeat since 1964. The reason is I don't think you want a nominee that offends whole areas of the public, whole ethnic groups. If you paint with a broad brush and you want to say, well, most Hispanics are drug dealers and they're rapists and murderers, well, that's crazy talk, and that offends a whole segment of our population. I think most people who immigrated to this country are assets to our community and came here seeking the American dream, the same way my ancestors did. Are there some people who break the law? Absolutely. And should they be treated and punished? Absolutely. But the thing is I think painting with a broad brush that all immigrants are bad people is a terrible thing to say, and it's going to be a disaster for our party. I also think Trump is a fake conservative because he's not really supported any conservative notions. He's for raising your taxes. He's been for Obamacare. And he's also been for taking private property from small property owners and giving it to him. That's why he pays so much money for politicians, is so he can get them to take people's property through eminent domain, and then he absorbs it into his casino business. So I don't think there's anything conservative about Trump. And I think ultimately when conservatives find out that he's a fake conservative, they're going to reevaluate the race.
I want to ask you, Senator, about this migrant crisis in Europe. It's been going on for some time now, hundreds of thousands of people seeking refuge there from Syria, from Iraq. But it seems very much in the consciousness now of Americans because of this just horrible, horrific photo that we've seen of a young boy who died in the process of trying to escape Syria. What do you think about how the United States should be involved in this, and if the U.S. should take in any refugees?
You know, I don't think there are any easy answers as far as how we, stop war and stop famine around the world, and so it will probably continue to occur. The one thing I think we should do in the Middle East, though, that could make maybe some of these wars less harmful, is I don't think we should be arming people who hate us. I think it's sad and it's a travesty that ISIS now has $1 billion worth of U.S. Humvees. They ride around in our tanks, they have our weapons, they have anti-tank weapons, and I think that's a mistake, because we got involved in the Syrian civil war and we got on the side of Al-Qaeda and ISIS, which I think was a terrible tragedy and a terrible mistake by President Obama. We are a welcoming nation and we have accepted a lot of refugees, and I think we will continue to do so, but we also can't accept the whole world, so there are some limits. I also think that those who come to our country, we need to get them to assimilate into our country. And I don't think it's a good idea to develop whole populations within the U.S. Who really don't like the U.S. So I think we have to be selective and careful, and we are a welcoming country, but we just can't take everybody.
You think the U.S. should play a part in this, though? Because obviously, Germany, a lot of other European countries are trying to figure out a way to accommodate some of these refugees. Do you see the U.S. fitting into that effort?
Well, part of the way we can be helpful in the effort is not by furthering and making the war worse in that region of the world, because they flee the famine and the disaster of war. And
but at
we
this
got
point,
involved
Senator,
in the
they're
Syrian
fleeing.
civil war.
I'm just trying to get a sense. They are fleeing at this point. These refugees specifically at this point in time, where we know a lot of them are held up at certain parts of the border in Europe. Should the U.S. play a role in that, or should the U.S. be looking more to Europe to deal with this?
Well, the people who live there will obviously have a bigger stake in accepting refugees, but we have been a very generous nation and we have accepted a lot of refugees. We've already accepted refugees from Syria, we accepted a lot from Somalia, but we've also run into some problems with accepting so many refugees that we take some of the people who could help rebuild the country. We did this with Iraq, where we won the war, but then we accepted 60,000 Iraqi refugees into our country, some of which wish us harm and have tried to attack us. Same way with Somalia. We've received so many immigrants and refugees from Somalia that many of them are part of the faction that has actually gone back to Syria to fight against us. So I think we do have to be careful with this, and we should have a warm and welcoming heart, but we also just can't accept the whole world to come here either.
All right, Senator Rand Paul, thank you so much for talking with us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.